It was supposed to be impossible. A prisoner of war camp carved out of frozen forest. Barbed wire in every direction. Guard towers with machine guns. Searchlights sweeping the snow. Dogs trained to track human scent. Yet on the night of March 24, 1944, 76 Allied airmen crawled out of the ground and disappeared into the darkness. They left behind empty bunks and dummy heads. They left behind a tunnel longer than a football field. And 50 of them paid for it with their lives. So how did they do it? How did ordinary men turn a Nazi prison into a launchpad for the largest escape of the war? This is the story of the Great Escape from Stalag Luft III. And how courage turned sand into hope. The year was 1942. World War II had entered its third winter. The Allies were bombing German cities by night. The Germans were shooting Allied airmen out of the sky. Every captured pilot, navigator, gunner, and bombardier became a prize. The Germans did not want them back in the air. They wanted them locked away. So they built Stalag Luft III, Stalag for Stammlager, Luft for Air Force, 3 because it was the third camp of its kind. The location was chosen carefully, near the town of Sagan, in what is now western Poland. Deep in pine forest, sandy soil that would collapse any tunnel. Far from friendly borders, the camp was divided into compounds, north, south, east, west, each surrounded by double barbed wire fences. Trip wires ran along the ground. A warning wire 30 yards inside the fence meant, shoot to kill, if crossed. Guard towers stood every 150 yards. Spotlights swept the yard every few minutes. The Germans believed no one could dig out without being seen. They were wrong. The prisoners were not ordinary soldiers. They were young, most in their 20s. They were skilled, pilots, navigators, engineers. They were angry, many had been shot down, some had watched friends die. They were bored, and boredom is dangerous in a prison camp. They formed escape committees, they elected leaders, they pooled knowledge, they stole tools, they planned. Roger Bushell was the architect, a South African-born RAF squadron leader. Shot down in 1940 over Dunkirk, escaped once from another camp, recaptured, sent to Stalag Luft III. He hated captivity, he hated the Nazis. He told the men, "We are going to make the biggest escape in history. We are going to get hundreds out. We are going to make them pay for every day they keep us here." They named the tunnels Tom, Dick, and Harry. Tom was under a stove in Hut 123. Dick was under a drain in Hut 122. Harry was under a stove in Hut 104. 3 tunnels, so if one was discovered, the others could continue. The digging began in earnest in the spring of 1943. They worked in shifts, 2 men at the face, 1 digging, 1 pulling dirt back on a sled made from a bedboard. A 3rd man at the entrance, passing buckets. A 4th man on lookout. They dug lying on their stomachs. The tunnel was 2 feet square. They shored it with bedboards. They dug 30 feet down to avoid detection probes. Then forward, 10, 20, 30 feet a day. The sand was bright yellow. They hid it in pant legs and scattered it in the garden during roll call. They built a forge to melt cans into tools. They built a pump from hockey sticks and inner tubes to push air through a pipe. They built a periscope from mirrors to watch the guards. The Germans knew something was happening. They searched the huts. They found Tom. It was abandoned anyway. They found Dick, used as storage. But Harry stayed hidden. The men kept digging. They needed more than a tunnel. They needed civilian clothes. They stole fabric from the camp tailor shop. They dyed it with crushed brick and tea. They sewed suits, overcoats, hats. They needed forged papers. A team of forgers worked in secret. They copied German documents with stolen typewriter ribbon. They used photos from Red Cross parcels. They made stamps from potatoes. They needed money. They melted chocolate tins into coins. They needed compasses. They made them from magnetized razor blades. They needed maps. They traced them from smuggled German newspapers. They needed food. They hoarded Red Cross parcels, chocolate, powdered milk, sardines. They traded with guards for eggs and onions. By March 1944, Harry was ready. 336 feet long, 30 feet deep. Exit in the woods outside the fence. They rehearsed. They made 200 outfits. They made 400 forged papers. They prepared 200 men to go. They planned to send one man every minute. They would crawl out, run to the woods, change clothes, and disappear by train. On the night of March 24, 1944, it began. Snow was falling. The temperature was below freezing. The men waited in Hut 104. They wore civilian clothes under their uniforms. They carried small packs, food, maps, money, compasses. At 10:30 p.m., the first man opened the trapdoor. He disappeared into the tunnel. Then the next. And the next. But problems started immediately. The tunnel was longer than expected. The exit hatch was frozen shut. It took hours to break through. The snow outside was deep. Men emerged covered in dirt and snow. They had to run across open ground under searchlights. The pace slowed. 1 man per minute became 1 every 3 minutes. Then every 5. The men in line grew restless. Dawn was coming. By 4:55 a.m., 76 men had escaped. The 77th man was halfway through when a guard noticed the open trapdoor. The alarm sounded. Searchlights swept the compound. Dogs barked. Guards fired into the air. The remaining men scattered. Some hid in the camp. Some were caught immediately. The escape was discovered. The Germans launched the biggest manhunt of the war. They brought in thousands of troops. They closed train stations. They checked papers at every checkpoint. Of the 76 who got out, 73 were recaptured within days. 3 made it home, 2 Norwegians and a Dutchman, who reached Sweden. Hitler was furious. He ordered all recaptured escapees shot. The Gestapo executed 50 of them, in small groups, away from witnesses. Bushel was among them. The bodies were cremated to hide the crime. The ashes were returned to the camp. The survivors were sent back to solitary confinement. The camp was tightened. Escape attempts dropped. But the men never forgot. They named it the Great Escape, not because 76 got out, but because they dared to try. After the war, the Allies investigated. The bodies were exhumed. The murderers were tracked down. 18 were hanged in 1948. Others received prison sentences. The story became legend. A film was made in 1963. Steve McQueen on a motorcycle. But the real escape was quieter. No motorcycles. No Hollywood chases. Just men in the dark, digging with spoons, believing freedom was worth the risk. The tunnels were filled and the camp was dismantled. Today, the site is a museum. The outlines of the barracks are marked. A memorial stands for the 50 executed men. Visitors walk the ground where Harry was dug. They see the sand. They feel the cold. They ask the same question the Gestapo asked in 1944. How did they do it? They did it with patience, with ingenuity, with courage. They turned a prison into a workshop. They turned hopelessness into hope. They showed the world that even in the darkest places, men can still reach for light. But the cost was heavy. 50 men shot, 23 sent to solitary. And the war went on. The escape did not end the fighting. It did not change the outcome. But it changed the men who lived through it, and it changed the way we remember. So tell me, family, what would you have done? Would you have dug? Would you have risked everything for a chance at freedom? Or would you have waited for the war to end? I read every single comment on these videos. I really do. Your thoughts, your theories, your personal connections to these stories. They mean everything to me. This channel exists because of people like you who love sitting with these questions as much as I do. If this story moved you, if it made you think about courage in the face of impossible odds, please do me a quick favor and hit that like button. It helps the channel grow so much. And if you're not already subscribed, I'd love for you to join the True Event Archive family today. We have more waiting: American cold cases, ancient enigmas, forgotten acts of bravery. I don't want you to miss a single one. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Would you have gone through the tunnel? What do you think gave those men the strength? Let's talk about it together. Thank you again for spending this time with me. Thank you for caring about the past. Thank you for being part of this quiet community. Until the next mystery, stay curious, stay safe. I'll see you very soon.